The Hawks started the pre-season practice round. That was down in Tassie against Collingwood. It was a high-scoring thriller. And then we had 8 games that followed that. So a lot to take in. The Hawthorn coach is Sam Mitchell. Sam, great to have you on the program.
Yeah, thanks for having me, Gerard.
After your game, how much more footy did you take in?
Yeah, it was hard not to watch as many games as I could, really. There was certainly the start of every game looked quite interesting. And then, a lot of them petered out and you get to a couple of plays and think, oh, that's got the queue in the rack now.
What piqued your interest?
Just the way different teams are playing, trying to get, aligned on, we play a couple of teams with new coaches, so really trying to figure out game styles and what the trends are and, how good they're going to be and what we need to do to knock them off and where they're going.
Would you elaborate a little bit? What trends are you seeing?
I think, having Nathan Buckley on the contrary is always helpful because he's picking up a few things that you can't see when you're not there. But I think the long kicking looks like it's coming into the game. Looks like there's a little bit more teams playing a little bit quicker, with that certain style, a little bit less kick mark across a lot of the games. So interesting to see which way the game goes. And I watched the Melbourne game with interest, and I heard you speaking earlier that they're the form team, and they look pretty sharp.
What do you think the standard looks like? How high is it coming into the season?
It's really. I don't know too much about the racing, but I did listen to. I think you said that it was Winks that didn't trial too well, and you always have a concern as a coach that if you do okay, maybe there's been a Winks or two in your race, and you think you're going a little bit further up the front than you thought. But I watched a couple of the teams, and certainly some phases of play that were pretty strong across those top sides. And I mean, we got a first class touch of probably the forgotten team a little bit, Geelong, and they were far too sharp and strong for us the week before. So there's plenty of work to do for the Hawks. What
did you think of Thursday night? What did you get out of it?
I think there were some positives out of the game where, whether it be some individual players who just performed at a level that we really hoped for. I think some of our potency around being able to score without winning the centre bounce battle was pleasing. I think we really struggled when we lost centre bounces last year to get the ball back into our front half. So that was probably one of the more pleasing aspects. And other than our finishing around goal, I thought our inside 50 stuff was much improved than last year.
So you scored 100 points, 14-16. There were obviously a lot of scoring shots in the game. It was 31-30. Did you like your potency up forward?
Yeah, I thought we looked quite dangerous up forward. We obviously had to change a few things with Mitch Lewis going out of there. So we've changed, a couple of small aspects about our inside 50s and Jacob Gazitsky, despite, he's having 5 shots on goal every week and his goal kicking will get sorted out pretty quickly. So I think, if we're getting that sort of potency from a key forward, and then you got Fergus who had 5 shots on goal as well as set up another couple. So I think those tools are giving us a bit of a target. And then, Luke Bruce and Chad Wingard and Dylan Moore and Connor McDonald, those guys are giving us some good speed and energy in the front half on the ground.
It was impossible not to be caught by Cam McKenzie and just how he played. What did you make of your top draft picks game?
I love watching the draftees when they play, and we had a couple the week before who were, wow, that's Patrick Dangerfield, and wow, that's Mark Blitzavs. And they played a little bit like that. They actually forgot they were good at football themselves. And Cam McKenzie, he's such a level-headed young lad. I don't think I've ever seen him excited or disappointed in anything that he's done. He's just very, very consistent in the way he goes about it. I don't think he would show any less effort if it was a game, a grand final, or if it was a practice game. He just continues to play in the same way with the same demeanour, which I'm sure at some stage I'm going to find quite frustrating because I want something out of him. But at the moment, he's just performing. Every time he's played well. So, really pleased with his performance so far.
Is he ready for round 1?
I'm not sure yet. We're not into selection just yet. We obviously had a couple of guys missing or rested from that game, so it's going to be a squeeze. And I think every club will be in this position, but perhaps we haven't for a while, and that's having really good players who deserve a game, not getting one. And there'll be a couple of unlucky lads in our squad. in coming weeks.
So is he emblematic, Sam, of how Hawthorn fans should be following the year, the fortunes of the young players who are coming in and the forecasting of what that might look like when the rise comes?
Yeah, I think when you look at a guy like him, he's going to play some really good games, and not just specifically speaking about him. Di Newcombe was a guy who did it last year, and we look at his good games and think, wow, he's such an impressive young lad. But he has some quiet games in amongst them, and when you watch the best teams and the best players in the competition, their quiet games are still very, very strong, and that's where our challenge will be when our players individually or collectively have a game that wasn't at their best. Are we still going to be capable? Because I think at our best we saw enough talent from enough of these young guys to say their best is going to be pretty strong, and we need to produce that as often as we can and limit the risk when they're not at their best.
The other part of the pre-season, not just the newbies through the draft but those who have been brought into the club. Have you liked the signs of Karl Amon, both in what you've seen privately and we've seen publicly?
Yeah, Karl's been just fantastic. I think his influence over the group, he's one of those guys that across the pre-season we did a lot of leadership education and training standards, behaviours and all that. And he was never really the first name, but he was always in the top 5 in every category that we assess. So when you think about someone with the level of consistency, he's a great trainer, he's got a great work ethic, he's got really strong relationships. He helps with the coaches with game style and how we should go about different aspects of the game. So he's a really well-rounded young man, and we're really pleased that he's come on board. And he was really disappointed. I thought, he had a pretty strong game, started really well and did some really good things, and he was just so disappointed with his own performance. So he holds himself to such a high standard, which is really strong behaviour that our young players need to start looking up to as well over the journey.
Sam, in the preparation for your second season, is there a difference? Can you notice a difference from this time last year when you were, whatever it is, 10, 12, 14 days away from having the team ready to go?
Yeah, I think there's always a little bit of nervousness in the air around how we're going to go, and are we going to be okay, and have we organised the pre-season well, and are the players ready, and all these questions. And not to say they're not there now, but there's at least a little bit of evidence to say that we've been here before and that we can perform with this type of preparation. I think every club thinks they're in a better place this year than last year, I suppose, but I certainly feel like our coaches are much more aligned on what we're trying to do and what we're trying to coach into our players and get into them. And I think the players have got a great understanding now of what we're trying to do. And it doesn't mean we'll always get everything right, but at least we'll understand when we get something wrong that it is wrong, and we want to improve it for the next time, whereas it won't be quite as much education.
So you are such an interesting case study in the choices that you've made and how you've articulated that as you're looking to build the next great group. How will you measure success along the way, Sam? Is it in the wins and losses? Is it more? Is it broader? Is it a broader contemplation than that?
No, I think it's quite difficult in the position we're in to be objective. I think we could lose a lot of games by close margins and perform really well, or we could, play poorly and win a couple of games that perhaps we didn't deserve to. So it's interesting that, you always look at the ladder, and that's the easiest thing to look at. And I think for us, we'll be looking at win-loss, of course, the same way every club will, but we have a bit more of a subjective view about how our players are developing, how our game style's working, how our predictability to each other is functioning, and what we think the future can hold. So the good thing about us for this year is really every player on our list is on our long-term journey now, and they're all going to be fighting each other for games, and that competitiveness amongst the players will be something that we'd want to see. And I think it's membership day today, so our 80,000+ members, if they look from the stands and say that's a team that's putting in an enormous amount of effort, and then that'll make us all happy, I think. So
in that, Sam, how do you keep the standards high? How do you find the elite standards whilst developing on all those measures that you've described there?
Well, the thing that we have is some really elite talent and some elite players, and so really a lot of it comes down to those guys. So watching the way James Sicily goes about it, watching the way Luke Bruce trains and reviews his games and things like that, those guys are in a rush. And I think the thing about our group is they are all in a rush, and so when we look to drive the standards, no one's saying, "Oh, hang on, I've only played a handful of games." The only people saying that is maybe the coaches or some of the fans. But really, as players, they're saying, "No, I need to know how to get better straight away." So they're willing to push the standards as hard as they're capable, and they'll be, no matter how well we go this year, unless it's a premiership, I'm sure every other team, 17 of us, will finish disappointed at the end of the season that we weren't a little bit better. And our challenge for our players is that burning in the tummy that you feel like you've underachieved, that needs to stay for a long period of time and build up over an amount of years before you've got enough fire in the belly for it to actually make a difference.
So for those experienced players and what their journeys have been, did you have that conversation with them across the off-season as to, I guess, what their broad responsibilities are to drive that team and to be in a rush, rather than we've seen teams where older players are sort of left wondering what's left once a team is in redevelopment mode?
No, I mean, I think possibly that may have been true a little bit last year with some players who, I was really honest with, and it was really difficult for them potentially to be better performers in that moment, but not for our future to not be getting games. But we don't really have any players like that now. I can't think of any decisions that we'll be making going into round one where we're going to have an option between youth and experience. We just play the player who's going to perform the best on this week, and that puts us in a little bit of a different position. I think of our players who are with us now, who are 27 or older. They've all been really bought into what we're trying to achieve, and fortunately, we've kept a lot of players who are ultra competitive. So guys like Sam Frost and Chad Wingard and Jarman Impey, players like that have just got this enormous desire for everyone to be better, and they hold themselves to such a high standard that rubs off on some of the young guys. And certainly they know part of their role is to coach and educate and drive the standards of our youth.
Do you think your fans have been spoiled through their lifetimes? They've had those eras, so not just years of success, but eras of success. Do you think the Hawthorn faithful is acutely aware of what you've planned and how you're executing it?
I think so. The feedback that I get, which is, from our fans in the street or what you like, is, some of them are like, "Hurry up, let's get going, please." And some are like, I know what we're doing, I know where we're going, and I think it's the right idea and it's a good plan. So, I think to our 80,000 members that they all know what we're trying to achieve. That success at Hawthorn, is premierships. It doesn't get measured in top fours or finals appearances. Hawthorn across its history is a premiership team. So that's what we're looking to get back towards. And unfortunately, with all the equalisation measures of the AFL, there's no easy path to that. Geelong have gone one way in topping up, and Sydney have had some advantages and have done a really good job with their list. And we see Melbourne, they've obviously been draft heavy over the years, and we're looking now to build this group that we've got into the next premiership era for us.
And for you personally, with part of that is you've been such a winner your whole career. Do you have to sort of so you're in a rush? Do you have to remind yourself to be patient along the way?
I'm not an overly patient person in general, so I do find sometimes we have a player like Denver Granger Barras, and sometimes he'll give away a silly free kick, and I get frustrated. And then I remember he's 20 years old and he's a key position defender, and you think how many strong key position defenders are playing good footy at 20 years old, and there aren't any. So you always have to be a little bit patient, but not at the time, not when you're dealing with the players. We know that for them, if they think they've got time, then that's the worst possible trait that they can have. Players need to be in a rush, and I think there's a famous Hawthorn quote that it's later than you think, and that's the attitude that we take, famous John Kennedy quote. So we use that, and it is later than we think for every player and for every coach and for every staff member that we have, trying to get to where we want to go as quickly as we can. We know we show some football that is capable of playing against the very best, but that's a little bit too spaced out for competing fully with what Melbourne did on the weekend, for example.
And do you have the sense, Sam, as you get close to a season that it's about to become overwhelming and that it sort of takes over every part of your thinking in your life?
Not really at the moment. We've got a 4-day break at the moment, so I'm doing a bit of weeding in the garden, to be honest, and but I do find myself thinking about, I better call this person, I'll have a chat with them, and I wonder if we played this guy in this position, would that work? And the brain's always ticking over, but I think that's just part and parcel of having any sort of passion in life, that your brain doesn't really switch off.
Sam, it's good to chat. The very best of luck for the season ahead.
No worries. Thanks for having me, Gerard.
Good on you. Sam Mitchell, the Hawthorn coach. It is Hawks Membership Day. You can be part of the new breed of Hawk in 2023 and become a member today at hawks.team/SEN.